Looking back now, I understand more. Those days in the bunker, everything seemed different.
Traudl Junge was only in her 20s, yet death was all around her. In the bunker under Berlin, she listened as people spoke of suicide like others might talk about dinner plans. It was strange, almost casual. Cyanide or a bullet? Which would be quicker? Which would hurt less? Outside, the city was burning.
We were isolated from reality. I typed his letters, saw his daily life, but I couldn't see the terrible truth of what was happening outside.
Inside, the air was heavy, the walls closing in. Traudl kept working, typing, watching, trying to make sense of it. She had once thought she would see history from the inside.
It's all lost. There's no hope.
Now she realized she was watching it die, and there was no way to stop it. The conversation about death. It began without warning, like any other conversation in the bunker. There was no pause in voices, no shift in tone to signal that they were about to speak of ending their lives. Traudl Junge sat at her desk, listening as the talk around her drifted toward the subject that hung over everyone, though rarely spoken aloud: suicide. But here it was treated as if it were a practical matter, a choice to be weighed calmly, like deciding on a meal or the best route home. Eva Braun asked Hitler directly what was the most painless way. Her voice was light, almost curious. Hitler answered without hesitation: cyanide. Quick, clean. You feel nothing, he said. Eva nodded, as though relieved by the answer. She added that she would prefer it, because if she used a pistol, her face might be disfigured when she was found. The ease with which they spoke unsettled Traudl. It was not just the words, it was the casualness, the lack of fear. Outside the bunker, Berlin was collapsing under fire, the streets filled with rubble, smoke, and the dead. Inside, the walls were thick, the air stale, and people were quietly deciding how they would die. Traudl had never thought seriously about her death before. Now it pressed close, a presence she could not ignore. She tried to imagine what she would choose if it came to her. She could not picture it. The others seemed to draw comfort from making the decision early, as if choosing the manner of their end gave them a last piece of control in a world that had stripped them of everything else. Hitler's answer had not been given in cruelty nor comfort, simply as fact, and in that fact lay a strange finality. For Traudl, the conversation did not end when the voices moved on to other things. It stayed with her, a quiet echo. In the days ahead, she would hear the sound of it again, beneath every step in the corridor, beneath the rumble of artillery above. Cyanide or bullet, quick or slow. In this place, it seemed, those were the only choices left. Himmler's betrayal. The news came suddenly, carried into the bunker like a draft of cold air. One of the men from the press office entered, his face tense. He had heard it on the radio, he said, a Reuters broadcast. Heinrich Himmler, Reichsfuhrer of the SS, had been in secret negotiations with Count Folke Bernadotte of Sweden to discuss surrender. For a moment, Traudl thought she must have misheard. Himmler had been one of Hitler's closest allies for years, loyal, devoted, almost unquestioning. Hitler himself had often referred to him as his most faithful paladin, a man he could trust above all others. And now this, a private approach to the enemy, with the war still officially being fought. She watched the news sink into Hitler. His reaction was not loud or violent. It was something colder, tighter. Anger, yes, but layered over with a deep sense of betrayal. It seemed to hurt him in a way that few other events could. If Himmler had turned, then no one could be trusted completely. His suspicion grew quickly. The cyanide capsules he had been given for his death, he remembered, had come from Himmler's staff. What if they were a trick? What if they contained something that would not kill him, but only make him unconscious? He imagined being dragged out of the bunker alive, paraded before the enemy, humiliated in front of the world. That thought, Traudl could see, was unbearable to him. He decided he needed proof. The poison would have to be tested, and not on a human being. His choice fell on Blondi, the German shepherd who had been his constant companion for years. The order was given without hesitation. Traudl felt a chill at how quickly it happened. It was as if trust had become a luxury no one could afford, even toward a creature that had never betrayed him. In the corridors of the bunker, the news of Himmler's betrayal lingered long after it was first spoken. For Traudl, it was another crack in a world already falling apart. If the most loyal could turn, then there was no loyalty left, only survival.
Now first, like always, be sure to hit the like button down below. It helps us out tremendously with the reach of this video. Thank you.
Testing the poison. The test took place quickly. Blondi, the German shepherd who had been Hitler's constant companion, stood nearby, unaware of what was coming. A doctor prepared the cyanide capsule, breaking it open inside a piece of food. Traudl stood back, watching. She had often seen Hitler with the dog, stroking her, speaking to her in a softer voice than he used with most people. Now, there was no hesitation. Blondi took the food, swallowed, and collapsed almost instantly. The room went quiet. It was proof that the capsule worked. Hitler's expression did not change. For him, and it seemed, there was only a necessary step in his plan. For Traudl, the moment was different. She felt a deep unease. The war had stripped away so much humanity already. But here was a small life taken not out of need, but out of mistrust. Blondi had been loyal, always at his side. And yet, in these final days, loyalty no longer mattered. Only certainty did. Afterwards, the body was carried away. The smell of poison lingered in the air. And Traudl realized that if even a beloved dog could be sacrificed to test a theory, then nothing and no one was truly safe here anymore. The question of an honorable death. Some still thought Hitler might have faced the end in battle. It would be fitting, they said, the commander of Germany falling with his soldiers, dying in the open rather than hidden underground. Traudl heard these suggestions and wondered if he would consider them. But when the idea reached him, Hitler shook his head. His voice was flat. His health, he said, was too poor. His hands shook so badly that he could not trust himself to fire a pistol. If he were wounded instead of killed, he doubted anyone around him could give him the final shot. And he would not, under any circumstances, fall into enemy hands. Not alive, not dead. The thought seemed to disgust him. Traudl understood the fear behind his refusal, but also saw what it meant. There would be no last stand, no open-air defiance. His war, which had begun in fire and thunder, would end in a quiet, sealed room. It was strange to think of it. The man who had moved armies across continents, who had demanded cities to fight to the last brick, now chose a death hidden from view. For him, perhaps, the bunker was already his battlefield. And here, the only victory left was control over the manner of his end. April 29th, affairs in order. By April 29th, the sounds of battle were no longer distant. Soviet troops were inside Berlin. The walls shook at times, and the air carried the faint tremor of artillery. The city above was almost gone. That morning, Traudl heard unexpected news. Hitler had married Eva Braun in a small ceremony inside the bunker. It felt unreal, a wedding in the middle of collapse. There was champagne, a brief moment of smiles, but it faded quickly. The war was still pressing in from all sides. Soon after, Traudl was called to the Führer's office. Hitler wanted to dictate his personal and political testament. She sat at her typewriter, heart pounding. She thought she would finally hear the truth, his real explanation for why the war had come to this end. She imagined a confession or at least a moment of clarity. But the words he spoke were not new. They were the same speeches she had heard for years. Accusations against enemies. Blame it on the Jewish people and foreign powers. Promises of vengeance that would never come. Then in the second part, he named a new government to follow him. For Traudl, it was a disappointment that left a hollow feeling. This was not the insight she had hoped for. It was only repetition, spoken in a voice drained of its old force. When he finished, she pulled the final sheet from the typewriter, realizing she had just typed a piece of history, but not the kind that brought understanding. The farewell. When the documents were done, Traudl knew the end was near. Later, Hitler came toward her. His movements were slow, his steps small, as if each one cost effort. His face had changed, pale, set, without life in the eyes. It looked almost like a mask. He extended his hand. She took it, but his grip was weak. He murmured something she could not catch. The words were lost in the heavy air between them. Standing beside him was Eva Braun. She greeted Traudl with warmth, even a little tenderness. She embraced her, holding her for a moment longer than expected. There was a faint, sad smile on her face. "Please try to get out of here," Eva said quietly. "Go back to Munich. Give my regards to my beloved Bavaria." It was a strange moment, two women speaking as if they were parting after a visit, not at the edge of death. Traudl nodded, though she did not know if she could keep that promise. Escape seemed almost impossible now. As she stepped back, she looked once more at Hitler. He was already looking past her, towards something only he could see. And she realized that, in his mind, he was already gone. Hours later, the doors to Hitler's quarters closed for the last time. Traudl did not see him again. She heard only muffled movements. then silence, then the sharp sound everyone had been expecting. Somewhere above, the war raged on, but down here it was over. The air felt heavier, as if the walls themselves knew. She thought of Eva's embrace, of the strange calm in their voices. History would remember this as an ending. But for Traudl Junge, it was the moment she understood how quietly the world can change and how death can come like the closing of a door.